Right. So the 2024-25 resident survey results. Basically what I'm going to do is just quickly run through the context behind the results, how we did this year, overall satisfaction, and why people scored it the way they did, levels of service target achievement, higher and lower satisfaction services, then some additional analysis on our transport network results, a little bit about our reputation and trust scoring, and then some sentiment scoring. So factors that contribute to the results this year, there are those that are outside of Council's control, and some of these have been around for a few years, but inflation and bank lending rates are starting to come down, but we do have government cost cutting that is a presence in the community. Supply chain issues still have impacts across operational and capital works. We've had executive leadership changes within the council with a focus very much from the current executive leadership team around making improvements based on previous results that we've had. So the resident survey program measures resident satisfaction based long-term plan levels of service targets. We've got two main components: the general service satisfaction survey, which measures services that all residents use, and so we've got the likes of roads, water and waste. We had 784 responses this year to that, so it's a representative sample. And then a range of point of contact surveys that are carried out over the year with services that have more defined user groups, so the likes of resource consents, events attendees, library users and the like. And we had just under 9,000 respondents there. And then we do a booster survey to target some of the groups that are perhaps underrepresented in some of our other surveys. So it's been a year of achievements, which is great. Overall satisfaction is up 7% to 53% from 46% last year, and that's a statistically significant result, so it's very much a genuine result. Proportionally more services met their targets than in any other time since before the earthquakes. More services improved their ratings by 1% or more. We had the lowest number in 9 years with reduced satisfaction scores on the previous year. And one of the things that's also really positive to see is that the core areas of concern have improved this year. So road condition, water supply quality, governance and decision-making measures, and measures of reputation and trust, and particularly leadership of the mayor and councillors and openness and transparency, where both saw agreement increases of 8% each from last year. Yet obviously issues still persist. The reasons for dissatisfaction remain unchanged. So we've got the roading and disapproval of council spending, but what I would say there is that the proportions dissatisfied have reduced. Reputation and trust measures, while they've improved, they still remain a challenge, particularly people's perceptions of value for ratepayers' money and the council making wise spending decisions. But again, each of them have improved this year. So overall satisfaction, as you can see, we've got that uptick there. So for the last few years, we've been seeing slight improvements, and this year a jump of 7%, which is great. And if you can see, it hasn't come from the more neutral respondents. It's actually been a reduction in dissatisfaction, also of 7%. So that's good to see. Why are people satisfied? So council is seen as doing a good job, and that's up to 15% of all comments, which was slightly higher than last year, and happiness with the services provided, which again was slightly higher than last year. Why are they dissatisfied? Unhappiness with the roads and road maintenance, and that's down to 13% from 17% of all comments last year. Disapproval of council spending down to 11% of all comments from 14% last year. And we're seeing a reduction in the number of dissatisfaction comments too. And those least likely to be satisfied, Pacific peoples and those aged 50 and over. And that's just a graph showing some falling proportions there around disapproval of spending and rates increases. And spending is still an issue for those aged 65 and over. So this one shows that more services are meeting their targets compared to last year. As I said, the highest proportion since before the earthquakes, at 84% meeting their targets. A quarter didn't meet their targets this year. Wastewater reliability, water supply responsiveness, walking friendliness, footpath condition, community parks, and content and delivery of events. I'm not going to go into detail on this slide, but what it's really showing is that there is that disconnect between target performance and some of our other measures. And if you look at positive sentiment scoring and overall satisfaction over on the right, there's still a reasonable gap that we're seeing between the two. Back in the 2015 LTP, we were looking at a 3% gap between the two. It went up to a 20% gap in the 2021 LTP, and for the first year of this LTP, that gap's reduced again, which is good to see, to 12%. So, higher satisfaction services, I won't read those all out, but what I would say there is that, as in previous years, success is closely tied to our customer service excellence. So especially where people see that staff manner and support is high and that they're being listened to and that staff are helpful. Facilities that are liked by families and where there's good or improved maintenance and the reliability of service delivery. So areas the council delivers best. What we're seeing there is for the last 5 years, it's been the same services. So we've got waste management, parks, reserves and green spaces and libraries. So waste management, people like the reliable and efficient 3-bin system. They like the fact that we fix bin issues promptly. And the parks and reserves, people like the fact that they're well maintained and see them as great spaces for the city and that they keep the city looking beautiful. So service satisfaction trends since last year. We can see there that 54% improved and 19% stayed the same and 27% worsened, which was lower than the previous year. So those that improved 4% or more, again, I won't read those out, but it also shows those that worsened 4% or more. And what I would say with the ones that did reduce 4% or more, they were still reasonably high scoring. So it's not like they were very low and slipping even lower. They did all still have relatively high levels of satisfaction. So lower satisfaction services, so these are the ones that score 50% or lower. Again, I won't read those out, but what I would say there is that water supply quality is no longer one of the lower satisfaction services, fewer mentions of taste and odour this year. And like with higher satisfaction services, the reasons are closely tied to customer service issues and expectation management. So where people feel the council isn't listening, or we're prioritising nice-to-haves at the expense of core services, or where people see there are asset maintenance issues, or where expectations aren't necessarily matching the service delivery cost realities that we have. So the areas the council needs to improve, and again, you can see there with roading, that's been the key area for improvement for many years. This year, parking has come onto the radar again for people, and a lot of that related to parking issues in Hadley Park, Botanic Gardens, and people not liking having to pay for that parking. Roading reasonings there are ongoing patch repairs of the roads and recurring potholes, the uneven surfaces, and disruption caused by roadworks. and those were similar issues to last year. And then council decision making and financial management, disapproval of council spending, people wanting there to be more financial control within the council, and where they feel that the council isn't listening to resident needs and priorities. So, road condition satisfaction and perceptions of safety on the roads have improved since last year, but they're still quite a bit lower than ease of travel perception. So we're seeing a bit of a disconnect there. People are saying that they're not satisfied with the road condition, but when you ask them how easy it is to travel around the city, you see up there that 80% say it is easy to actually travel around our city. And ease of travel is high for all age groups, and was especially so for people who walk. Road condition satisfaction was lower for those aged 65 to 79 years. Footpath condition also has improved, but satisfaction decreases with age, and you've got the issue there for older residents where there's mobility issues associated with uneven and cracked footpath services. But again, walkability of our city is still quite high at 74%, so it doesn't sort of match necessarily with perceptions of footpath condition. Reputation and trust, all of them went up this year. We have an average reputation and trust score of 31%, which is an improvement on last year's 27%. And the average negative rating went down to 35% from 41% last year. And this is basically just showing that the areas where there was the largest increases this year, which was the leadership of the Mayor and Council, councillors, and the council being open and transparent, which both improved 8%, and the green ones, the green highlighted ones, are the ones that are the highest scoring, and the red highlighted ones are the ones that are the lower scoring ones. And what I'd say there is that while there's been improvements, which is great to see, reputation and trust still remain a challenge for us. Resident sentiment scoring. So we've basically what I do here is I take every single sentiment score that people give across the resident survey program each year. So we had over 82,000 scores, individual scores this year by over 9,800 residents, and 65% of those scores were positive. That was up 1% on last year. The scoring across long-term plans, positive sentiment scoring was lowest in the last LTP. Overall sentiment scoring across the 10 years is 66% positive, so that's almost 400,000 positive scores. 17% are negative scores, just over 100,000 scores, and the average overall organisation performance satisfaction rating over those 10 years is 54%. And then just leaving you with this one, which is the sentiment scoring by ward that I do each year. So we're seeing Fendalton, Central, Hornby, Papanui and Banks Peninsula sitting above, either at or just above the Christchurch average, and those that are below the average or well below were Spraden and Linwood. And I need to do more digging into what's going on with Spraden and Linwood, but what I have seen is that their overall satisfaction scores are lower than the average for the city. So
right,
that's it.
We've got some questions. But before I do questions, Kath, that's absolutely phenomenal. The amount of work that you've put into there, a significant amount of work. Yeah. When you say, right, I'm going to start doing the next resident survey, how long does it take you? And I know that stuff comes from a lot of different areas and you get students in to help and stuff, but is that
So I've often said it's a bit like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You no sooner have you finished painting in one direction than you're starting in the next. So I've already actually started the preparation for this year's resident survey program, because it's definitely our biggest research program in the city, and probably would be bigger than I would think probably many other or most other surveys that are run in the city. So it's a big undertaking. We do have the students that come on over the summer months, but to be ready for them, there's a lot of preparation work that has to go on behind the scenes to get ready for that surveying. And then some services we're actually surveying right throughout the year.
No, excellent work. Well done. So we've got Kelly first.
Thank you. Really fascinating stuff. Given the fact that our city council staff, as we found out yesterday, seem to be a lot happier with the organisation that they work for, the city council, and the way that is trending, and their appreciation of leadership, etc. Do you do any linking between the staff satisfaction and the satisfaction of the residents of the city? Because that would be an interesting comparison.
Yeah, it would.
As to trends.
We haven't done any direct linking, but what I would say is I think when you've got a more stable and calmer staff base, I mean, people can get on and do their jobs delivering services for the city. And we have seen over time, if you overlay different leadership regimes in the organisation, you can see trends and movements in that overall satisfaction score. But I think it's really positive to see that across a number of areas this year we're seeing improvements. So resident survey, staff survey, objective levels of service scores have also gone up. So I think it's very definitely a genuine improvement that we're seeing.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering whether you could actually, at some stage, potentially put together that metric of the general service satisfaction with a similar, staff satisfaction. Because, like you say, I mean, a happy worker is a good worker, and or a good worker is a happy worker, or vice versa.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome,
Yeah,
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tyrone?
Thank you. Just some questions about just statistical reliability. I'm just wondering about the sample size. Are there any comments that you've got to make on sort of margins of error and that kind of thing? And the reason I ask is because, so let's say in Banks Peninsula, 21 respondents. So anytime one person's really dissatisfied with anything, I probably know them, that's 4.8% of respondents, and sort of just some comments on that.
So with, I mean, I put those ward results up because I've been asked for them in the past, so you like to see those, but I do recognise that where you've got small numbers of respondents, that can be a challenge. A general service satisfaction survey, so that's the 784 respondent survey, is a representative sample with a margin of error of plus or minus 3%, 3.5%. And that was where, as I was saying at the outset, that overall satisfaction score, that the improvement of 7% is actually a statistically significant result. So that's where, when
overall,
they've actually put it through the survey programs that actually look at significance, it is a genuine result that we would expect to see if we ran the survey again. But yeah, at some of those margins, those results are there for you to see, but
that, I mean, that's good. Thank you. No, I understand that. And just one more, please, Your Worship. But I mean, looking at the, just talking about statistical significance, in terms of the satisfaction with the leadership of the mayor and councillors, the Banks Peninsula number is off the charts better than all the other community board areas. It's just 4 times higher than the next best one. So is there any kind of anything under that you sort of...
I don't have any particular comments on that at this stage, but yeah.
Ready? Good work. Yanni, please.
Thank you. In the newspaper article around the resident survey, I think the press got a special briefing, and there was mention that there was concern about the Botanic Gardens Hagley Park car parking charges but I haven't been able to find where that's expressed in the survey. I've tried to, obviously there's a lot of information, I've tried to read through it.
Yeah.
Are you able just to highlight to our attention
Yeah.
what that feedback was?
Yeah, so that will be feedback that was specifically in the surveys on the Botanic Gardens and Hagley Park. So we have a lot of open-ended comments that go to the business units, and I can't quantify it at this stage, but it was a theme that was in there that people were not that happy with those charges. So I'd have to look into the exact numbers of comments for you.
Okay.
But it's in there. So it doesn't necessarily show in the general service satisfaction survey open-ended comments that you've possibly seen. It's more in the individual surveys that were done specifically at point of contact at those parks.
Sure. And was there any concern in those comments around people not knowing that it was coming in, or were people aware of it?
I think that people were probably aware of it, but there were comments, for example, about, it's one of the few free activities for people with families, and they don't have much choice but to bring cars if they've got young children, and that they're just unhappy about the fact that they're actually having to pay for parking in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
And did you pick up anything on the freedom camping issues that we've had expressed?
There wasn't anything specifically.
Right. Okay.
No.
And the final question is just in regards to the people thinking that they've got influence over our decisions. I mean, it's still 2/3 of people see it as small or no influence over our decisions.
Yeah.
Do we know how that benchmarks against other councils in terms of trends?
We are pretty consistent with other councils. Like we ran the quality of life survey in the last year, and our results are not too dissimilar to experiences that are in other councils in terms of perception. So we definitely don't. We're not an outlier there.
Thank you, mate.
And Linwood, it's roads, odour, organics, wastewater. There's some really big issues in Linwood that we know about, which do generate people being pretty dissatisfied with us.
Yep. Samuel?
Yeah, hey, thank you for that, and it's good to see it heading in the right direction, which is awesome. I just had one, and I don't know if we can go back to the slide. It was just where we talked about the 27% on roading, and then followed that was the decision making. No, keep going back. That one.
Sorry.
No, that's So 10% council decision making and 27% roading. I just wondered if you had a view on whether they're correlated.
Are they what? Sorry.
Are they correlated?
Not necessarily. Although I mean, what we have found is that the key driver of overall satisfaction with organisation performance is people's perceptions of roading and the dissatisfaction with the maintenance of that. So you potentially could tie them together. I mean, one of the things that we do see is that there is quite a disconnect between people's perceptions of roading and other issues around it. Like they say they want the roads improved and they want that done faster, but they also don't want us to spend a lot of money, and they're not happy with rates increases. But as we know, fixing roads is really costly, and to do it fast is even more costly. They also don't like the disruption caused by road repairs. So we've got a real tension there in that how we actually manage those expectations and communicate the issues that we face with residents is definitely an issue. And for that reason, I think they are linked, the dissatisfaction with spending with the road conditions, because people might say, for example, spend more on roads and less on the nice to haves. But then we've also got people who say spend less on cycle lanes, and then there's others who say spend more. So there's just a constant tension, I think, that we're facing there.
So just thinking about looking at the data, because I think I agree it's such a reliable data set in my mind in terms of how we can guide decision making. What What do we, and I know in the report it's talked about the heads of service will go away and have a look at, I guess, what they can do. When do we sort of, if we're looking at how we can move the dial, clearly the thing that stands out is the 27% on roading. What are the next steps for us as an organisation in terms of a bit of an action plan on, I know we talk about it sort of every year and we've made progress, but is there a way to really supercharge that to help drive it? Because that has sort of that benefit of everyone is happier.
I think I'll let Mary comment too, but I mean, one thing I would say is that communicating exactly what it is that we're doing, and I think it's an ongoing communication exercise. It's one thing to say in the LTP what our plans are, or even in an annual plan, but we've got to communicate that throughout the year to people.
Yeah.
I think that roading has been an issue for many, many years, even around the time of sort of before the earthquake. So it's sort of been a bugbear that people have got, and I suppose it's because they're driving on the roads every day. But yeah, I think communicating more about exactly what we're doing, but also the challenges we face. If people want the roads fixed, they've got to accept there is going to be ongoing disruption. And if they want the roads fixed faster, that's going to be at the expense of other services we deliver, unless they want to pay more in rates. So I don't know, Mary, whether you've...
Yeah, really good point.
I'd only add that ELTR next week got some planning time to look at results across these surveys and identify key priorities for the year going forward and further. And that's across the surveys and the performance results. And then also engaging with heads. Heads have already had a look at this. Kath presented, was it last week?
Yes.
I can't remember, a week ago. So then drill down there. So we're going to do exactly what that is.
Okay.
What has moved things up to now, and what are the areas that we need
what
to
will
put
move
more
the
meat
dial
on.
again for So in terms of when that would come, and not necessarily when that would come back to us, but how that would come back, is that going to be, because I almost think it's like it's a standalone report as opposed to coming through just our performance reporting?
Yes, and I think, and we will talk to Peter and Kath as well about potentially getting some information to overlay with the information that's coming back on the annual plan and priorities.
That would be good. The other thing, and then I'll shut up, Phil, is just
It would walk in late and start talking.
It's usual. It would just be really good to compare it also, because I think this is so useful in terms of the trend.
Yes.
But I'd love to see how we are sitting against in those key areas against sort of the major metros as well.
Yes, the quality of life survey gives a lot of that, doesn't it?
Yes,
So we'll
yes,
be
it
able to
does.
report,
Yeah.
So could
But
we
yes, I
overlay that
can
into
look
the-
in terms of the likes of roading condition and others too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Be good just to get that comparator, because we can't really compare against sort of small districts. We've kind of got to compare with our peers. So yeah, great, thank you, and really good work. It's great.
Pauline.
That's mine particularly as well. Great minds think alike. But I was actually going to ask you to explain the whole concept of the disconnect there and what we do about it. So you've pretty much done that, and I think you've couched it in communication. But does it sort of really indicate that people don't really have an understanding of the organisation when they're saying that they're criticising spending, criticising the roading, but don't want to spend money on it, and then other people say it's easy to get around?
Yeah,
So
and
for
look,
us-
I think that is an issue, and I think it's a real challenge for our decision makers to actually handle that, and that people often have conflicting views on things that at times don't necessarily match. I mean, obviously, if you want roads fixed, it's going to cause disruption, or it's going to cost a lot.
So if you sat down with someone and asked them these questions about the survey, and then went a little bit further and said, so you're dissatisfied with your road, would you support council spending some money to fix it? And that answer would indicate something. It's a yes or a no, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? You've got to this is almost too high. And
Yeah.
You've got to go down a little bit further.
Yeah, and I mean, that's, I suppose, that's one of the challenges that we face with the resident survey program, to be able to delve in real detail into some of these things can be a challenge given the scale of it. But it would be very interesting to do more work in talking to people about the issues of disconnect and expectation management and
Yeah.
what actually does form their opinions and how you would actually then go about changing them, because I think with some it can be quite difficult to swing people around. And I've said it before, the reputation and trust measures. Reputation and trust take a long time to build and they're very easy to lose. And when you lose them, again, a very long time to bring them back. So I think sometimes with some of this we're seeing a lag as well.
Oh, no, that's interesting. Yes, yes. So it takes a while, once changes are made, to actually see that effect responding.
That's
to people.
right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Jake, are you still there, buddy?
Yep. Mine was actually more for debate.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Okay, down there, Jake. Okay, Andre.
Thank you. Well, remind Councillor Fields, I think 21's a great sample. That's about half the population of your wards. That's a perfect sample.
That's the beauty of it.
The question's the same one I asked the last couple of years when we did this, in that we get information broken down by community boards, but not wards. And like for me to find this, for this information to be presented to me and be useful, I really kind of need a lot of it to be broken down by ward, like whether it's satisfaction of footpaths or road and whatever else. Pools will be reckoned into totally different areas with different issues. So there's 175 samples here for footpaths, for example, for our community board. Like, why am I not able to access the breakdown for each of those wards?
For the general service satisfaction results, we would go down to the community board level, but generally speaking, for good, robust ward level data, we would need to increase the sample size quite significantly, and there's quite a significant cost involved in that. I understand that's a challenge.
Size, I guess.
Yeah.
My question is about accessing the data that's already been collected. So the data's been collected by ward, and then it's been grouped into community boards.
Yes.
I'm after the data that was collected by ward, so I can get a feel for the satisfaction of those different types of things in my ward.
Yeah. We can have a look at it and see what we can do, but that would probably be mainly around the general service satisfaction results, the results that were collected from that survey.
Because what I've gathered the last couple of years is I'm not, in a sense, I'm not allowed to access that data by ward.
Yeah, but this is don't forget, this is for the whole shebang. I know
it is for the whole shebang, but I'm none the wiser on what the satisfaction levels are for roads or footpaths, whatever else in my ward. And the information's been collected with that, and I'm not able to access it. You know what I'm saying?
We're going to look at it.
I guess just to remind you that as a council, you're here to govern the city, not to govern.
Yes, I understand that. We're also here to represent a ward, and like if we're collecting the data, and I'm not able to access the data that's been collected, it just.
Okay, righto. We'll look at that. Aaron, then Mel.
A couple of completely different ones. It would be quite nice to have.
There's a question in here, is there, or is this debate?
I would have thought a question.
Okay, good.
Because I'll take my pitch up a little at the end, so it sounds like a question. It'd be nice to have a question around if people had the choice, would they live somewhere else as well in the survey? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because people go, oh yeah, I hate my city, but I wouldn't move anywhere else, because they're very parochial. They're a little bit, cities can be a bit like families, can annoy you, but you'd not have it any other way.
Well, I mean, we potentially could look at that, although most of what we're doing is surveying levels of service targets. Right. So this survey possibly isn't the best mechanism for that. Our Life in Christchurch survey, we could probably look
more
at that.
Okay,
yeah.
And then the other one is around the road dissatisfaction. The complaints I get aren't over so much now over road condition. That's levelled off. The ones are like particular intersections where you just can't get through, or you're waiting for multiple changes of light, so it seems just unnecessarily congested. Speed humps, lack of parking. So, but that gets lumped in with road. You know, people are dissatisfied with the road,
Yeah.
and boy, do they whinge.
The road condition question is specifically asking people about the condition of the roads. Where they would be combined is the reasons for dissatisfaction with organisation performance, and that lumps roading, issues they've got with roading, like the ones that you've said with road maintenance issues. But the overall condition of the roads is a separate question that specifically asks them about the condition of roads.
Melanie?
I was wondering if you had any feel from the survey about why Pacifica people may be more dissatisfied than other communities.
Not in any particular detail, because again, the numbers are quite small. I think we would need to be looking into that in more detail, and probably the resident survey program itself would not be the best mechanism for doing that. I think probably focus groups or something that was a bit more face-to-face would probably be a more appropriate way to investigate that.
Okay, and then Tyrone, then we'll go into debate.
Thank you. Sorry, just on the roads thing, like, so, I mean, most roads are in the city are controlled by council, but like Banks Peninsula's main drag is a state highway, which, you know, that's NZTA's responsibility. Do we, when someone complains about a pothole or the condition of a road, do we know what sort of road they're talking about, whether it's a state highway or a...
No,
Yeah, so-
we really literally ask them about the condition of the roads, because I
Right.
think most people probably don't necessarily distinguish between the two.
Right.
But you're right, there is a difference in terms of who has control over them.
So, for example, someone might complain that the Littleton Road tunnel was a bit dirty, but you know, we can't really do much about that. You know,
Yeah,
that's a waka kotahi
Yeah.
thing. So it's kind of hard to. Can we tease those things out in future?
Yeah,
or-
although, I mean, ones like that, certainly in terms of where they've made comments, I haven't seen any that are sort of at that level of like the likes of the Littleton Road tunnel. Most of it is around the ongoing patch repairs of the roads and potholes.
Right.
But again, whether they're
is a
state
big problem
highway
on State Highway
related
75,
or
yeah.
our own local roads.
Okay, cool. No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, we're going to debate. We've had so many questions. I know it's a short question, very long answer probably, the question you asked. Anyway, Celeste, would you like to have a question, please?
Just looking on page 92 or 97, depending on how you read it, just looking at the number of respondents and around how often have you cycled, have we looked into sort of the relatively low uptakes in some parts of the city? Because I can looking across the different areas without drilling into the detail, it seems to be that the areas that are least serviced by decent, safe infrastructure have the lowest uptake.
Yeah, that would probably
namely
be the
Banks
case.
Peninsula and
Yeah.
coastal Burwood Linwood.
Yeah, but we haven't looked in any detail. As I've said, I mean, the main purpose for the residents survey is to survey at a fairly high level around resident satisfaction targets in the LTP. There's potentially a whole program of research that we could do under that to drill down into all of these to find out more.
And I can understand that. I just think in terms of direction of travel for investment, this might be a useful thing to pick up when we get the report back about where we should prioritise some of that.
Yeah.
Because when people don't feel safe, they don't participate there. Therefore, it might drive a lower satisfaction in that level of service.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to move this and Pauline's happy to second it. So we'll go into debate or discussion if anyone wants any. Now, Jake, you had your hand up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is great news. It's a sign of what we all know to be true, which is Christchurch is at the peak of, well, hopefully not the peak, but heading towards the peak of a real boom in that cycle that all cities go through. It's also a testament to the great work that we do here and that Mary and ELT and indeed everyone contribute towards, and maybe even my colleagues as well. and I think it's yet another sign of how we're feeling as a city. The ward specific stuff, following off the back of Tyrone's question, I mean, that is something that's only put up for our benefit. At that scale, or at that level of granularity, it's not really that robust. For example, Central is regarded as being the second most satisfied ward. While I highly suspect that's true, looking at one Fendleton, I can't imagine that people are overly pleased with Jamie Goff's job performance. So there's little things like that are obviously going to be inaccurate, but on the whole, that high level data is really, really good. And then with regards to accessing it, I don't think, I suspect when people fill out the survey, they do so on the basis of anonymity. So I'm not sure we could just dive in and pull out those bits and pieces. So anyway, great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Mark, please.
Thank you. What a great trend we're getting in this survey. I think it's all great to see moving in the right direction. I'm really blown away and thrilled to see the stellar mover of this in the way of ward. Hornby is incredibly satisfied compared to what they were in the previous survey. 18% or 19% of improvement. Wow. Hey, it's kind of what I'm picking up out there in the ward. People are really happy with where we've come to in the last 12 months. When you think back 12 months ago, April, we opened the Maratiki Hornby Centre. That in itself really made the ward smile. So having the wins in the wards like that makes a big difference in these sorts of surveys, and it's good to see that people are feeling happier about council and what we're doing. And let's keep up the good work, and I'm really keen to see the ELTs dive into the numbers and see if we can figure out how to even make these satisfaction numbers look even better the next time round. So it's a great trend in the right direction, and let's keep up that trajectory.
Yanni, please.
Thank you, and thank you to staff for the work that they've done on this. I personally do think it is useful to get the ward data to as most granular level that we can. If I look at my ward, I mean, what we know is, the organics plant moving has been delayed. Last night at the community forum around wastewater treatment plant, residents were advised that it may not be till 2029 that they get some relief from the new activated sludge being up and operational. And we've also had a number of people being really concerned about the condition of the roads, particularly post-earthquake repairs, or not having earthquake repairs and still being in bad shape. I think we got a report a couple of weeks ago that said I think we had about 83 years to go before we got our roads back to the condition they were before the earthquakes hit. So I do think it's important we do consider what's happening with roading. I certainly welcome getting the more detailed response over what we can do. I think what's really important is we do tell people the story of what we've been through, because clearly we've got a long way to go. And one of the issues that we do need to grapple with, which I'm sure we'll do through the annual plan, is the idea of rating for renewals or simply continuing to borrow. But at some stage, we need to get on top of our renewals. In my view, that's probably the single biggest reason, alongside the patch repairs after the earthquake instead of the proper renewals, that has led to such a declining satisfaction in our roading. Just in conclusion, though, I do want to highlight one thing that's really, really positive, and that is the increased view of the transparency of council. As someone who worked for a long time to get our workshops and our briefings and our information sessions opened up to the public, I think it's really heartening to see that despite the concerns that people have raised at the time, actually what we've seen is the benefit of taking that approach, where we are seeing a shift in people's perception of how transparent we are. So I just really thank staff for the work that they've done in that space to enable us to do that. I think it is a positive step forward. Having said that, I do remain concerned that still 2/3 of the public feel that they have little to small influence over our decisions. And I think we still need to continue to look through. If you read through some of the comments, you do find people feeling like sometimes we're just going through tick box exercises and they're worried that we have predetermined views. So I think we still need to do a bit more work in that space. But thanks to the staff for the work that they've done. it is useful to get the information. I personally would like to get a lot more detailed information broken down by ward. I think it is helpful to us as elected members.
Carol?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I really think you've got to take the wins when they're offered. You know, satisfaction in 2022 was at 42%, and it's made 3 data point jumps to 53% and corresponding drop in dissatisfaction. So, look, I think it's fantastic. 3 data points is a trend. It's good to see that overall satisfaction is a lot higher. I don't think that we can separate this from the staff satisfaction survey or survey that was that we saw the results of yesterday. A happy worker is a good worker, and I think we owe a real debt of gratitude as a city to Mary and the executive leadership team, and in fact every worker who works for council, because really we're riding on their backs. At the end of the day, they're the ones who actually do the work and put in the effort day in, day out to get these things right. And I've certainly seen a real willingness amongst them in all my dealings with them, that they are really open and willing to improving and to doing the best for our city. So I think we should take this as an endorsement of the staff that we have in the organisation. And I'd like to publicly thank Mary for her leadership, because I think that stability that she's brought in the time that she's been the chief executive has made a real difference. I just don't think we can separate these. I'd also like to congratulate the elected reps, all of them, community board people and councillors. At the end of the day, from what I see, we're all local, committed and engaged, which is also my election slogan for next time. Yeah. But I guess the challenge is to keep this going. You know, obviously we've come a long way from the hangover of the earthquakes, but we're still affected by it. That's why we're getting all these new buildings and new facilities, and that's why there's a lot of disruption in the city. But we're moving forward, and I think it's a really, really positive thing, and I'm certainly happy personally to be part of it. Thanks.
Tyrone?
I too would like to speak in favour of the staff recommendation. There's actually nothing that I can say that Councillor Barber didn't just say there. I mean, I believe that we live in the greatest city in the greatest country in the world, and therefore the greatest city in the world. But we can always improve. You know, there's always things that we can do to improve. It feels like we're heading in the right direction. I too want to give a shout out to all the members around this table. I know they all work incredibly hard to deliver for their residents, and we can't do it without the staff either. So, and Kelly, you said it very, very, very well. So there's probably no need to reiterate that. But we've got a very strong CE, very strong senior leadership team, and great staff underpinning that. So it's very positive to be a part of, and onwards and upwards for us, I think.
Sarah?
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, again, reiterate what others have said in thanking the organisation for their incredible mahi. It is interesting to note, as Councillor Johansson did, that the things that the residents love most about the city and are most satisfied with are the things that the staff do. The things that they are least satisfied with are the things that we do. And so we need to work on that as elected members and focus on promoting that engagement instead of bashing each other publicly. I think would go a long way to building that trust and confidence in us and our decision making. We've had these surveys before. They're really useful to feed into our decision making, especially when it comes to the long-term and annual plans for where we're looking at investing our money. And we've had the information back, so we had it back before the long-term plan last time, on how we invest our money, but we still fail to invest enough money into both the systems and the actual capital or operational investment into renewing our infrastructure. And that's especially obvious to residents when it comes to our roads, because they drive on them every day. It's less obvious with our water pipes, although that reactive space for maintenance there is also not particularly satisfactory. But if you think about the last transport report we had, just in the middle of last month, Across the network, sealed roads need more than 7% of rehabilitation works as at their end of their useful life. Current funding of about 3.8 million achieves 0.11% rehabilitation annually, about 2.4 kilometres, which infers that we are about 83 years behind in our required rehabilitation and reinstatement works across the network. We know that we've got more information coming up about that. It also says that they cost more to maintain than to renew once they get to that stage. And yet we still, having had this information in the past, fail to put enough money on to enable the organisation to do this work, to smooth our roads and actually do more than just patching. So I'd like to see us make sure we actually address that instead of continually kicking the can down the road in this annual plan.
Samuel.
Yeah, thank you. Look, first, I think this is a really good result for the city, and we're a conduit for the city, or a mechanism that operates within the city. But actually, the sentiment of people saying, we are doing things better than we have is a really good thing. I think, and it'd be no surprise we think about the questions I was sort of trying to delve into, and I just acknowledge the team for that. Is we now need to look at the things that are really going to move the dial. And actually, if 27% of the concern is around roading, then we need to be more deliberate in our transport program. I think if people are saying we need to do the basics better and target that investment, then that's hopefully what that report says. I think our biggest challenge, and we've seen it for probably 3 or 4 years, was when we add too much to the work program for transport that diverts them from doing the basic stuff really well, and then we punish them when they don't do everything well. So we set them up to fail if we're not letting them be really focused on a particular set of work. I think if we actually sort of took all the other stuff away from it and genuinely just focused on some key things to move that dial, the city would thank us for it, and I think that's what we should be looking at. So with a bit of luck, that report will reflect that, and then we will need to feed that into the annual plan and then long-term plans going forward. But, as everyone knows around this table, we've set the organisation a challenge of making a realistic capital program, and we can do that. Actually, it's not necessarily just putting more money on budget to fix stuff. It's about ensuring that we're not distracting the organisation from trying to do a million things and letting them do the 3 or 4 things really well that will move the dial. So I think if we can get that thinking into it, that actually we can focus the money we've got into a system that generates the best return for the city, then that'll go really well, and hopefully we can reflect that in the annual plan.
Okay,
But big thank you to Mary and the team, because I think, as Kelly mentioned, that stability at an organisational level has allowed them to deliver significantly more than we have. And I think all too often, they become the meat and the sandwich between often us and the public. We're always the ones that will take the good news, but we're the first to point the bad news at them, and actually they can't often defend themselves. And I just think it's really useful when we get good news like this to acknowledge that, not only have we had this, but the staff survey, which show that people enjoy working for the city, they're proud to live in our city, and actually the trend is going in the right way. So long may it continue.
Pauline?
Just quickly, because everything has really been said tonight, but it would be remiss of me not to actually also congratulate the council team, the councillors and the chief executive and the staff for this report and the report yesterday. It is a significant move of the dial in the right direction, and it is continuing to do that. And also, while we're talking roading, we've got to look at the note that the satisfaction there in roading has improved by 6%, so we're on the right trend there. But, you've got this disconnect thing, which I was quite fascinated with, and when you're looking at you're wanting to fix, the roading we're talking about, but not spend the money. And to do that, you have to sacrifice somewhere else. So it's kind of like whack-a-mole. And you're going to find the bit that you sacrifice, people are going to say, hang on, you stopped doing that in my area. So we've also got the balance of where do we increase investment and where do we work within the same envelope. So that's also another challenge. So I hope people can appreciate the challenges that we face sitting around this table trying to please everybody. And we know we're never going to please everybody, but doesn't mean we can't try, and we are trying. So, I'd just like to give big ups to this report and the trend that the organisation is taking. And thank you, Mary, and your team particularly.
Good. Right. Yes, Aaron.
I'll just make it real short, because like Pauline said, everything's been said, and this is positive. So I too will thank the staff and the ELT and Mary's leadership. But also I will point out that the 3 upward ticks that Kelly referred to have come in since Phil's been mayor, and we don't often give Phil that many accolades because it's always fun to punch him a little, and jibe. But in seriousness, he's not your atypical political sort of person, and probably that Merrill, but he's done a great job. And in all seriousness, the evidence is there. The ticks have gone up. He's delivered, and so for that, Phil, thanks very much, mate.
Cheers, thank you. Right, I'd just like to go along with what Sam said, just a little bit for a start. We've got that thing of the roading's the worst, so we've got to hit the worst thing the hardest. That gives us something to really focus on, and it may come at the cost of other things, but that's the one that's the standout. But first of all, I'd like to once again thank Kath and her team, because, man, you had some really good answers there for some questions. I don't know if I could have done it, but especially the whole team led by the young lady on my right. If it wasn't for her marshalling the troops around and getting it together, we wouldn't be where we're looking at today. Phenomenal amount of work's gone into this report, and it is good to hear. But we will always have an issue, a big issue to deal with, and I'd just like to think that we're doing them quicker and better than we have, and that's what it's showing. And to coin a phrase of what other people have said, we're certainly heading in the right direction. So I'm more than happy to put this motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you. That's carried. Under 8, no.
Just before we break, can I also acknowledge Kath and the team? This has been a phenomenal amount of work that you do all regularly. As you said, you've just finished one, you start another, and you're right across every single detail of it. So fantastic work.